Hey, honey, I'm going to record a few reviews. All right, I'll be in here if you need me. Who the fuck are you?
You're my fave.
Oh, well, thanks, man. It's always good to hear that my hard work's appreciated.
Me and Bubba, my little brother, we listen to you every night.
Oh, yeah? That's awesome. You know, my little brother used to call me Bubba, too. That's pretty cool.
But, now that we're here in flesh and blood, I could maybe make a request and it'd still count, huh?
Well, I mean, you know, I'd love to, but I actually only do requests for my Patreon supporters, and if I start doing it for everybody, then it kind of takes away the exclusivity of that privilege, and I don't really want to do that to my patrons.
Hey, lick my plate, you dog dick!
Now that's just fucking rude. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 continues the story of the demented Sawyer family. This takes place 13 years after the original film, and after a radio DJ plays an audio tape over the air of the Sawyer families killing their latest victims, they take over their radio station, go after this radio DJ, and her only help is in the form of Dennis Hopper, a Texas Ranger hell-bent on revenge. Right off the top, guys, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is easily, bar none, one of the biggest departures for a sequel that I have ever seen from the tone and the direction of the original film. Part 2 is wildly different than the original movie. This, ironically, is actually the intended tone that Tobe Hooper was going for with the original movie. He says to this day that there is a lot of black comedy that people just do not pick up on for that original movie. Honestly, I think he's a little bit delirious about the movie that he made, but nonetheless, he put that tone that he was going for in the first movie and really doubled down on it for Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. So in a way, this is kind of like his true vision for what the first movie was supposed to be, to a degree. And on top of the new comedic tone, one thing that definitely gets ramped up in the sequel is the gore. And without a doubt, this is the most fun chapter in this entire franchise by far. Actually, if I'm being honest, it's probably the only fun movie in this entire franchise. Coming along with that, it's also the least serious and the least scary, but you know what? It's intended, and it's not supposed to be a movie to really terrify you. It's supposed to be this wild-ass ride that you're laughing at, but you don't quite understand why you're laughing at it, and it totally nails that. Just look at the posters. You could tell the difference in the posters for the different tones that they were going for from the first movie to the sequel. And honestly, this movie is so different from the original that I was nervous to actually dive into it for the longest time. I didn't watch this movie until about 6 months ago for the very first time. And everybody always said that it's so different and so weird and so strange, the direction that they went after that original movie, that it always sounded unappealing to me. It always sounded like it was destined to be a movie that I was not going to understand, not going to like, not going to ever want to rewatch. But luckily for me, I took a shot in the dark, I threw my money down, bought the Scream Factory release of this movie. The cover's pretty badass, and I just took a chance on it. And honestly, I love the hell out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. First and foremost, let me go ahead and get the biggest positive out of the way. The thing that this movie is known for, the thing that makes this movie stand out, is Bill Moseley's performance as Chop Top. It's not very easy to come into a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie and completely overshadow Leatherface. What Bill Moseley brought to this character in this movie, it is no question why that guy instantly turned into a horror icon, and you have seen him sprinkled throughout horror history from the time this movie released, even through to today. A lot of Rob Zombie movies.
Dog wheel hunt! Get that bitch, Leatherface! Get that bitch! Dog will hunt.
Chop Top is such a wild and memorable and entertaining character, and he's so demented all at the same time that it totally fits in this Texas Chainsaw Massacre Sawyer family that we have been introduced to. If you do a little bit of digging, he's actually the twin brother of the hitchhiker character in the first movie, and you kind of pick up on that in this movie because they have some of the same mannerisms. He has some of the same like kind of wild ticks about him, the same energy, but Bill Moseley is so much better, so much more entertaining, and honestly so much more scary and demented than the hitchhiker character was, at least for me.
That Lefty request record? You honked out today? I love that. Let's see.
And funny enough, the brother hitchhiker, the dead one from the first movie, actually returns in this movie as kind of a demented cameo. The beginning of the movie, whenever they're on the truck chasing down the two boys, and towards the end of the movie when Chop Top is actually in a suit with a dead body dancing around and acting all kooky, that's the dead hitchhiker. He's dancing around with the corpse of his dead twin.
Simon's got a girlfriend, 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 Simon's got a girlfriend.
And all the while being the biggest loose cannon in the family, the biggest loose cannon in this movie, his one-liners and the lines that come out of this dude's mouth will damn near have you on the floor laughing because of how wild and out of left field they are. I love Chop Top so much that I actually find myself quoting him from time to time, and I have no idea why. Dog will hunt, burn it like a rat, burn it like a rat. Pure classic. Like I said, he is the reason why I continuously want to rewatch this movie, and he's still the most memorable part of Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 by a landslide. But you also have some really good characters. You got Carolyn Williams in here as Stretch. She's basically your protagonist in this movie. She's just an innocent DJ who plays the tape of these boys getting murdered because she wants to get it out there. She wants people to help. She wants people to be able to find these murderers and try to stop this evil. And in the process of that, she kind of fucks herself over and gets entwined in this Sawyer massacre. But she's a really strong character. She's very different from Sally for the first movie. She's very different from characters that you're used to seeing in that protagonist role. And Carolyn Williams, that's an actress that you see a lot in B-movie horror. You see her in the Leprechaun franchise. You see her in a lot of other series that she just pops up and you go, holy shit, that's Stretch. Leatherface in this movie is played by Bill Johnson, a very different Leatherface from the first movie. The first movie was much more kind of a psychological character and very strange and appalling. This one is much more played for comedic laughs, and it's much more of a sympathetic, childlike, goofy version of Leatherface. And it totally fits this movie. It's not my favorite Leatherface of the franchise, and honestly, that's one of the reasons why Chop Top overshadows him so much, is because this is such a strange take on the character, but it does fit the tone of the movie. But one element of this Leatherface that I actually like quite a bit, because it's a really unique take on the character, he gets a little bit of a crush on Stretch, and so you get to see a little bit of a compassionate and a remorseful side to Leatherface, because he really doesn't want to hurt Stretch. He actually lies to his brother Chop Top and tells him that he killed her when he didn't, and he let her live. So a really unique take on that aspect of the character that I actually appreciate in this.
That dirty thing told me you boys got her. Well, yeah, Leatherface killed her once already tonight.
And the other character I want to talk about is Lefty, played by Dennis Hopper. Now, the interesting thing about Lefty, which is actually the main thing driving the story, at least for me when I watched the movie, is that he's actually the uncle of Sally and Franklin from the first movie. And in this, he is on this bloodthirsty taste for vengeance, going after the Sawyer family. He's kind of like the one ranger that keeps talking about this massacre and keeps talking about this family that's out there that nobody else will believe, but he's relentless. Every time there's a chainsaw murder, he is there before anybody else. He sees the details that nobody else will see, and he is one of the coolest protagonists in this entire franchise because he is going for blood, and he totally holds his own against the entire Sawyer family.
Boys, boys, boys.
What the hell's going on here? That's the American way of entering a man's home singing like that? Oh, I get it. The old fresher game, huh?
Boys, you never should have been doing this.
Another really cool aspect of this movie that I like is the second and third act. Whenever you actually get taken to the hideout of the Sawyer family, what a perfect location and setting for the lair, the secret location of the Sawyer family, an abandoned carnival. It's like a fun house from hell. Not only was the set design great in that, but it really adds to the eerie and the grimy and the really gory and macabre tone of the second and third act whenever you really start to see the Sawyers doing what the Sawyer family does. What a perfect setting. It's one of the coolest settings in the entire franchise, and it really keeps the pace of the movie changing when you go from the radio station in the first act all the way to this fun house from hell in the second into the third act. And I love the way that they shot this place all the way up until the very end of the movie that just keeps progressing. The funhouse unfolds as the story unfolds, and the deeper you get into the story, the deeper you get into this funhouse of hell. That's what I'm gonna keep calling it. I like that. The funhouse of hell.
Sex or the saw? Sex is, well, nobody knows. But the saw is family. It's family? Wait till Granddad hears about this.
And the last thing that I really enjoy about the sequel, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, is that I really like the score and the soundtrack that they use in this movie. I really think it's an entertaining score. I like it whenever it pops up on the Blu-ray menu. I think that whenever it keeps coming back throughout different pieces of the movie, it actually kind of gives the movie a bit of a punch as far as the speed and the pace of what things are going. Really like the music in this. In the original movie, it was just weird, eerie tones, and it worked perfectly for what they were going for that one. But this one has a little bit more of a fun score, and I enjoyed it. Now, there are a couple of negatives with this movie, I gotta be honest. First of all is the characters that really open up this movie. They're called Buzz and Rick. Rick the Prick. Now, there's these two college kids. They're driving around in a car. One of them is shooting at mailboxes and shooting at signs, and they call up Stretch, and they're basically harassing her for the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie. And while it is a quirky and an interesting way to introduce you to the tone and the new direction that this movie is going, what an annoying fucking character that Rick the Prick is. That laugh, it makes me want to fast forward through the first 15 minutes of this movie, I'm not gonna lie. It is that aggravating. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
And from all the senior boys at Wheeler High to all the senior girls who are so stuck up, while you're on the road to nowhere.
Oh, you mean we're on the road to nowhere?
No, baby, we're on the road to Texas OU weekend in Dallas. You're on the road to nowhere.
Put the horse, baby!
But luckily, those two characters don't stick around very long, as the Sawyer family always finds a way to right the wrongs. Or wrong the rights. Something. There's balance. There's balance in there. I also didn't really care for the fact that they revisited the dinner scene of the first movie. It seemed like kind of a retread. It seemed like it was very monotonous whenever we got to this scene. And yet again, they're trying to put a sledgehammer in Grandpa, the fucking Grandpa, who will not die, put it in his hand and try to get him to smack it over Stretch's head. We've been there. It was demented. It was macabre. And it was wickedly weird in the first movie. Here, it's played for more laughs, and I just felt like it was unnecessary. I feel like that's the one scene in the third act that I could have done without, or I wish they would have done something a little more creative with their own version of a dinner scene. Not just basically reshoot the same dinner scene from the original. But honestly, my biggest negative in this movie, I can't get into too much detail of because I do want this to be a spoiler-free review because I really want you guys to check this movie out if you have not given it a chance yet, because I was that guy not too long ago. I don't really like how ambiguous it is with a lot of the characters' fates. There's not really any scene that shows too many of these characters either dying or escaping in the third act. And without giving too much detail, it just kind of aggravates me because the movie ends and you're like, wait a minute, is that person dead? Is that person dead? Are they alive? Are they coming back in a sequel? What happened? Because you didn't really get any kind of closure with any of the characters except for Stretch. But nonetheless, even though it's a little bit too ambiguous, I still love the hell out of this movie. I'm not gonna go as far as to say that I love it more than the original, but you know what? Where the first movie doesn't have the rewatchability, this one has rewatchability galore for me. Even though the first film is brilliant and completely important and just landmark for what it did for the horror genre and for what it did as far as having a movie that feels so real and so macabre that it's almost hard to watch. This movie is an absolute blast and just full of entertainment. It is a total thrill ride, and I absolutely love it. Now, one thing that I will say and I will admit to 100%, and this is not a negative for me, obviously, since I really love this movie, but I'm gonna put it out there and make it very clear as I wrap up this review. This movie is not going to be for everybody. This is really a love or hate movie. You're either gonna walk into this and it's gonna be so strange and weird and foreign to the tone of the first movie that you're gonna absolutely hate it and never wanna revisit it again, or it's going to be the opposite of that. It's going to be so wild and different and inventive with the story, with the characters, with the world of the first movie, and pushing it into a different territory for this sequel that you're going to love it just as much or damn near as much as the original movie. You're going to be on one of those two sides, so it's going to be a gamble. But I know what side I'm on. I love this movie. So if you have not checked out the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 and you are a fan of either the original or this franchise in general, absolutely go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2? Are you on the left side of the argument and absolutely hate this movie and think that it is so wild and weird from the first movie that you can't stand it? Or are you on the other side with me and you absolutely love how wild and different this movie is and it's one of your favorite installments in the franchise? Put your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 down in the comment section below and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out some of my social media links like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, those are down below, including the link to my Patreon page, which is a great way to support me and to support this channel while getting exclusive content for your eyes only if you are indeed a patron. My patrons have the ability to not only do exclusive Google Hangouts chats and also do exclusive commentaries, but you also have the ability to choose the topic of a video for me depending on what tier you choose. So whether you want to see me do a specific movie review, album review, or just talk about a specific topic, that's a patron exclusive content. That's a patron exclusive privilege, so definitely check that out, guys. If you want to check out some more of my videos, Dog Will Hunt, check them out right here.